A billionaire divorces his pregnant wife, accuses her of cheating, and forces a DNA test to prove the baby isn't his. The results come back 99.99% his son. He destroyed an innocent woman over a lie. But that's not the worst part. His mistress, the woman he left his wife for, gives birth weeks later. Another DNA test, 0% match. The baby isn't his either. The biological father is a rival executive Leonard destroyed 5 years ago. The affair, the manipulation, the pregnancy, all of it, was a calculated revenge plot. She was never in love. She was a weapon. One DNA test vindicated his wife. The other obliterated his empire. This isn't just about betrayal, it's about what happens when power meets truth and loses. Stay with me, because when both results leak, the entire world picks a side. Drop a comment, guilty or justified. And don't forget to subscribe. Leonard Vail didn't just own buildings in Manhattan, he owned silence. When he walked into a room, conversations paused, eyes dropped. Even senators straightened their ties. Power like his wasn't loud, it was absolute. The ballroom at the Greenwich estate gleamed under crystal chandeliers. 1,000 guests dressed in diamonds and desperation, all hoping for 30 seconds of his attention. Cameras loved him. Headlines worshipped him. Visionary investor. Modern philanthropist. The man who could move markets with a single phone call. But power has a shadow. And Leonard's was growing. He stood at the center of it all, champagne in hand, smiling that rehearsed smile, the one that never touched his eyes. Beside him, politicians laughed too hard at jokes that weren't funny. CEOs nodded like obedient dogs. They didn't see the man, they saw the empire. Leonard had spent 2 decades building this illusion. Flawless reputation, untouchable image, control over everything, his wealth, his influence, his legacy. Everything except the truth. Because behind the marble walls of his Connecticut mansion, something was cracking. Slow, quiet, dangerous. His wife, Serafina, sat alone in the East Wing that same night, 8 months pregnant, hands resting gently on her belly. She'd prepared the nursery herself, soft blues, hand-stitched blankets, a name already chosen. She believed in promises. Leonard believed in power. And when those two collide, someone always breaks. The guests raised their glasses. To Leonard Vail, the man who has it all. He smiled. But across the room, someone else was watching. A woman with sharp eyes and sharper ambition. Elara Miles. She didn't clap. She calculated. Her red dress caught the light. Her gaze never wavered. Leonard noticed. Their eyes met for 3 seconds. That's all it took. Ego recognizes hunger, and hunger knows opportunity when it sees it. That night, as limousines pulled away and the estate fell silent, Leonard stood at his office window. Below him, the world slept. Above him, nothing. He felt invincible. He had no idea he was already falling. What happens when a man who controls everything meets temptation designed just for him? Subscribe, because what comes next will shatter every assumption you have about power. The marble was about to crack, and no amount of money could stop it. Serafina woke before sunrise. Not because she had to, because she wanted to. The Connecticut morning air was crisp through the open window of their bedroom, the one Leonard hadn't slept in for 3 nights. She didn't ask why anymore. She just folded his untouched pillow and smoothed the sheets. Love, she'd learned, was often practiced alone. She moved through the kitchen quietly, her swollen belly brushing the marble countertop as she prepared his coffee. Dark roast, no sugar, exactly how he liked it since their first date in Boston, 7 years ago. Back then, he'd looked at her like she mattered. Now he looked at his phone. Still, she set the cup on his desk every morning. A small ritual. A reminder that someone still cared. The nursery had become her refuge. Pale yellow walls. A wooden crib she'd assembled herself after Leonard said he was too busy. She ran her fingers over the tiny clothes, soft cotton onesies, hand-knit booties from her mother. She whispered to her belly, "You'll be loved, I promise." Her phone buzzed, a text from her sister in Portland. Has he even asked about the baby? Serafina didn't reply. What could she say? That her husband's empire had swallowed the man she married? That charity galas mattered more than doctor's appointments? That she'd become invisible in her own home? She placed her hand on her stomach and felt a kick. Strong, determined. "You're a fighter," she whispered. She didn't know how much that would matter soon. That afternoon, she drove to a small bookstore in Stamford, one of the few places that still felt like hers. The owner, an older woman named Margot, smiled warmly. "How's the little one?" "Getting ready to meet the world." "And Leonard?" Serafina hesitated. "Busy, as always." Margot's smile faltered, but she said nothing. Because some truths are too painful to speak aloud. Serafina bought a book on constellation myths. She wanted her child to know about the stars, about warriors and legends, about things bigger than money. She didn't know she'd need those stories to survive what was coming. Have you ever loved someone who stopped seeing you? Drop a comment, because Serafina's devotion is about to be tested in the cruelest way. The storm was gathering, and she had no idea. Leonard came home at midnight. Serafina heard the door. She'd been awake for hours, lying in bed, one hand on her belly, the other clutching her phone. No text, no call, no explanation. She heard his footsteps in the hallway, slow, deliberate. He didn't come to their room. He went straight to his office. The door clicked shut. She exhaled the breath she'd been holding. Morning came with silence. Leonard sat at the breakfast table, scrolling through emails. His coffee, the one she'd made, sat untouched and cold. "How did you sleep?" she asked softly. He didn't look up. "Fine. The doctor's appointment is Thursday, for the ultrasound." His thumb kept scrolling. "I'll see if I can move a meeting." Not, "I'll be there." Not, "I wouldn't miss it." Just, "maybe." She swallowed the hurt and tried again. "We still haven't decided on a name." "You pick," he said flatly. "You're better at that kind of thing." That kind of thing. Like their child was a decor choice. He stood, adjusted his cufflinks, grabbed his briefcase. "Leonard." "I'm late." The door closed before she could finish. She sat alone at a table built for 12. Later that week, at a Forbes conference in Lower Manhattan, Leonard was a different man, charismatic, warm, engaged. A journalist asked, "What drives you, Mr. Vale?" He smiled. "Legacy. Leaving something that lasts." The room applauded. He didn't mention his wife. Or his unborn child. That night, Serafina tried once more. She'd made dinner his favorite, slow-cooked ribs from a recipe his mother used to make. He came home at 10, looked at the table. Cold food, melted candles. "I ate already," he said. Her voice cracked. "You used to tell me when plans changed." He turned, eyes sharp, irritated. "I'm running $1 billion empire, Serafina. I don't have time to check in like a teenager. I'm your wife. And I'm exhausted." He walked past her, up the stairs, into the guest room. The lock turned. She stood in the dim light of the dining room, one hand on her belly, tears sliding silently down her face. Somewhere between Wall Street and Greenwich, Leonard Vale had stopped being a husband. He'd become something colder, something dangerous. And the worst part? He didn't even notice. Ilara Miles didn't stumble into Leonard's world. She engineered her entrance. The charity auction at the plaza in Manhattan was invitation only, old money, new power, the kind of event where a single handshake could change your life. Ilara had studied the guest list for weeks. She knew Leonard would be there. She knew Serafina wouldn't 8 months pregnant, too tired, too delicate for late nights. Perfect. She wore red. Not the soft, apologetic kind, the kind that demanded attention. When Leonard entered the ballroom, she was already positioned near the bar, close enough to be noticed, far enough to seem uninterested. He saw her immediately. Men like Leonard always do. She didn't smile, didn't wave, just met his gaze for 2 seconds, then looked away. The oldest trick, and it worked. Within 20 minutes, he was standing beside her. "Leonard Vale," he said, extending his hand. She took it lightly. "I know who you are." Most people would have gushed, praised, flattered. Ilara sipped her champagne and said nothing. He liked that. "And you are?" "Ilara Miles, consultant, mergers and acquisitions." "Impressive field." She tilted her head. "I don't do it to impress people." A lie. Everything about her was designed to impress. But Leonard heard confidence, independence, challenge, things he no longer felt at home. They talked for an hour. She laughed at the right moments, asked sharp questions, made him feel like the most interesting man in the room, which, to be fair, he thought he was. She never mentioned his wife, never asked about his personal life. That made it easier. When the auction ended, Leonard handed her his card. "We should continue this conversation." She smiled, slow, controlled. "Maybe. Not yes, not no. Just maybe." It was enough. He watched her leave, red dress cutting through the crowd like a blade. For the first time in years, Leonard felt something he hadn't felt in his own home. Excitement. He didn't call Serafina that night. He texted Ilara instead. Miles away, in their empty Connecticut estate, Serafina folded baby clothes in the nursery. She didn't know a storm had just been invited in. And storms don't ask permission. They just destroy. Ilara was patient. She didn't rush, didn't push. She let Leonard come to her. And he did. Coffee meetings became lunch. Lunch became dinner. Dinner became late-night calls where he complained about stress, board meetings, impossible expectations. She listened, nodded, sympathized. Never once did she suggest anything. She simply planted questions. "Does anyone actually understand the pressure you're under?" Leonard sighed. "Not really. Not even at home?" A pause, then, quietly, "Especially not at home." Ilara leaned back in the leather booth of a dim restaurant in Soho. "That must be exhausting." "She doesn't get it," Leonard said, swirling his whiskey. "Serafina, everything's about the baby now. Every conversation, every emotion." "She's probably scared," Ilara offered gently. "First-time mothers can be overwhelming." The word landed perfectly. Overwhelming, needy, emotional. Leonard nodded. "Exactly." Ilara let the silence breathe. Then, almost as an afterthought, "You deserve someone who sees you, not just what you provide." He looked at her. She met his gaze, steady, unflinching. Something shifted. At home, Serafina noticed the change immediately. Leonard's coldness turned to irritation. Her questions became accusations of nagging. Her needs became burdens. "Why do you always need something from me?" he snapped one evening. She'd only asked if he'd be home for dinner. "I just wanted to spend time with you. I spend time working, so we can have this life." "I don't care about this life, Leonard. I care about us." He laughed, cold, bitter. "Us? There is no us right now. There's you, obsessing over baby books, and me, keeping everything from falling apart." She stepped back like he'd struck her. He didn't apologize. The next day, Ilara sent him a text. "Hope today's lighter than yesterday." Simple, thoughtful, timed perfectly. Leonard replied immediately. That night, Serafina tried one last time. She made his favorite meal, set the table, lit candles. He came home at 11. Saw the table, the cold food. "I can't do this right now," he muttered. "Do what?" "The guilt trips, the emotional ambushes." "I made you dinner. I didn't ask you to." She felt something break inside her. But she didn't cry. Not in front of him. Leonard walked upstairs, phone in hand. He texted Ilara. "Free tomorrow night?" Her reply was instant. "Always." Ilara smiled in her Tribeca apartment, staring at the screen. Leonard Vale was officially hers. He just didn't know it yet. Leonard stopped pretending. The mask he'd worn for years, the dutiful husband, the considerate partner, crumbled in less than 2 weeks. Serafina felt it most at night. He'd come home late, smelling of expensive perfume that wasn't hers. When she asked where he'd been, he'd look at her like she was an interrogator, not his wife. Out, networking, building the future you get to enjoy. The emphasis on you stung. One evening, she made the mistake of calling him during a meeting. He answered on the fourth ring. What? Not a question. A demand. I'm at the hospital, she said quietly. False alarm. But I was scared. And you couldn't wait 2 hours? Her throat tightened. I thought you'd want to know. I want you to stop acting helpless. The line went dead. She sat alone in the St. Vincent's waiting room in Bridgeport, hands trembling. Have you ever needed someone who made you feel like a burden? Subscribe, you'll want to see where this leads. At home, things escalated. Leonard began criticizing everything. The way she dressed, the way she walked, even the way she breathed seemed to irritate him. You're always hovering, he snapped one morning. She'd only brought him coffee. I don't need you to try, I need space. She set the cup down carefully. You used to like when I did things for you. I used to like a lot of things. The silence that followed was sharper than any scream. Later that week, Serafina's mother visited from Vermont. She saw the exhaustion in her daughter's eyes immediately. Where's Leonard? Working. He's always working. Serafina said nothing. Her mother gripped her hand. Sweetheart, this isn't normal. He's under a lot of pressure. So are you. You're about to have a baby. Serafina pulled her hand away gently. He'll come around. He just needs time. But deep down, she knew. Time wasn't the problem. He was. Meanwhile, across town in a glass high-rise, Leonard sat across from Ilara at a private rooftop restaurant overlooking the Hudson. She reached across the table, touched his hand. You seem lighter, she said. He smiled. I feel lighter. Good. You deserve that. He believed her. What he didn't know was that Ilara had already started planning her next move. Because this wasn't just attraction. It was strategy. And Leonard Vail, brilliant, arrogant, blind, was exactly where she wanted him. Some men don't fall into traps. They walk in willingly. Subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. It happened on a Tuesday. Serafina was folding laundry in the bedroom when Leonard walked in. No greeting, no warmth, just a cold, calculated stare. We need to talk. She looked up. Okay. He closed the door behind him, locked it. Her pulse quickened. I've been thinking, he said slowly, pacing near the window, about timing, about coincidences. Leonard, what are you? When did you get pregnant? She blinked. What? It's a simple question. You know when. We found out in January. That's not what I asked. His voice was ice. When did you get pregnant? Her hands trembled. Why are you asking me this? He turned to face her fully, eyes hard, accusatory. Because I've been traveling, a lot, and I started doing the math. The math? You're 8 months along. I was in Singapore for 3 weeks around conception. Her breath caught. You were home for 4 days in between. 4 days. He laughed bitterly. Convenient. The room tilted. Are you saying? I'm saying I don't know if that baby is mine. The words hit like a physical blow. Serafina stood frozen, laundry still clutched in her hands. You think I cheated on you? I think it's possible. Based on what? Based on the fact that you've been distant, emotional, secretive. I've been pregnant, her voice cracked. I've been here alone, waiting for you to care. Leonard's jaw tightened. Don't turn this around. There's nothing to turn around. I have been faithful to you every single day of this marriage. He stared at her, cold, unmoved. Then you won't mind a paternity test. The air left the room. Serafina's legs nearly gave out. She gripped the edge of the dresser. You're serious. Completely. Tears blurred her vision. I can't believe you're doing this. I can't believe I have to. She shook her head, disbelief turning to agony. Who told you this? Who put this in your head? No one had to tell me. I'm not stupid. But someone had. Miles away, in her Tribeca apartment, Ilara stared at her phone. A message from Leonard earlier that morning. I confronted her. She smiled. Phase 2, complete. Serafina sank onto the bed, hands covering her face, her whole body shaking. Leonard walked to the door, unlocked it, paused. The test happens next week, non-negotiable. Then he left. And Serafina, loyal, loving, destroyed, was alone with a lie she couldn't fight. Because how do you prove devotion to someone who's already decided you're guilty? The paternity test wasn't scheduled at their private physician's office. Leonard made sure of that. He chose a clinic in New Haven. Public, clinical, cold. "Why here?" Serafina asked as they pulled into the parking lot. "It's neutral," Leonard said flatly. Translation: he didn't trust her enough for their family doctor. The waiting room smelled like disinfectant and fear. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A mother bounced a crying infant. An elderly man coughed into his fist. Serafina sat with her hands folded over her belly, staring at the scuffed linoleum floor. Leonard sat 3 seats away. They didn't speak. When the nurse called her name, Serafina stood slowly. Her back ached. Her heart ached more. Leonard followed her into the small exam room. The technician, a young woman with kind eyes, smiled gently. "We'll just need a quick blood draw from both of you, and a sample from baby after birth." "After birth?" Serafina's voice was barely a whisper. "Standard procedure for prenatal paternity testing requires—" "We'll do the non-invasive prenatal test," Leonard interrupted. "Today." The technician hesitated. "That's more expensive and—" "I don't care what it costs." Serafina closed her eyes. The needle pierced her arm. She didn't flinch. Physical pain was nothing compared to this. Leonard gave his sample without a word, signed the paperwork, paid in full. The technician handed him a receipt. "Results in 7 to 10 business days." He nodded. Serafina walked out of that clinic feeling like a stranger in her own life. In the car, she finally spoke. "You really believe I could do that to you?" Leonard kept his eyes on the road. "I believe people are capable of anything." "I'm not people, I'm your wife." "Then the test will prove it." Her hands curled into fists. "This isn't about proof, it's about punishment." He didn't deny it. They drove back to Greenwich in silence. That night, Serafina lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Her phone buzzed. A text from her sister. "How are you holding up?" She didn't know how to answer. "How do you explain that the man you loved had turned you into a defendant in your own marriage? That your body carrying his child had become evidence in a case you didn't know you were fighting?" She typed one word. "Broken." Across the hall, Leonard sat in his office, whiskey in hand. His phone lit up. A message from Ilara. "Proud of you for standing firm. Weak men avoid the truth." He read it twice. Then he smiled. Because in his mind, he wasn't cruel. He was just protecting himself. But protection built on lies becomes a prison. And Leonard had just locked himself inside. The divorce papers arrived on a Thursday. Not in Leonard's hand. Not with an explanation. A courier delivered them to the front door at 9 a.m. Serafina signed for the envelope, thinking it was a delivery for the nursery. She opened it in the kitchen. The words blurred. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Irreconcilable differences. Contested paternity. Her knees buckled. She gripped the counter, her pregnant belly pressed against the cold marble. He didn't even have the courage to tell her himself. Her phone rang. Leonard's lawyer, a man she'd never met. "Mrs. Vale, I'm calling to confirm receipt of the documents." Her voice was hollow. "Why?" "I'm sorry?" "Why didn't he tell me himself?" A pause. Professional. Detached. Mr. Vale felt it was best to handle this formally. "We're married. We're having a baby. That's precisely why legal clarity is necessary." She hung up. Her hands shook so violently she dropped the phone. By noon, the story had leaked. Not the details, just enough to wound. Billionaire Leonard Vale files for divorce from pregnant wife amid paternity questions. The headline spread like wildfire. News outlets picked it up. Blogs, gossip sites. Financial journals framed it as a personal matter. But the public saw it for what it was. Humiliation. Serafina's phone exploded with messages. Friends, family, people she hadn't spoken to in years. She turned it off. She sat alone in the nursery she'd built with her own hands and wept. Meanwhile, at a private members club in Lower Manhattan, Leonard sat across from Alara. She reached over, squeezed his hand. "I know this is hard," she said softly, "but you're doing the right thing. It doesn't feel right. That's because you have a good heart, but you can't let guilt trap you in a lie." Leonard exhaled. "The media's tearing me apart. They always attack strength. Let them talk. The truth will come out." She smiled, warm, reassuring, poisonous. He believed every word. What he didn't see was the flicker of satisfaction in her eyes. Alara had orchestrated every step. The doubts, the distance, the cruelty. And now, the crown was almost hers. Across town, Serafina packed a small bag. She couldn't stay in that house anymore. Not in the home where love had died. Not where every room whispered betrayal. She walked out the front door, one hand on her belly. No destination. No plan. Just survival. Because sometimes, the only way to fight back is to refuse to break. And Serafina, silent, shattered, strong, wasn't done yet. Serafina drove north. No destination, just away. The Connecticut estate disappeared in her rearview mirror. Every mile felt like breathing for the first time in months. She stopped at a small motel outside Hartford, the kind with peeling paint and a flickering neon sign, $28 a night. The clerk didn't ask questions. She paid cash. Room 12 smelled like old carpet and lemon cleaner, a single bed, a lamp, a window overlooking the highway. It was nothing, and somehow it was enough. She sat on the edge of the bed, her hands resting on her belly. The baby kicked, strong, insistent. "I know," she whispered. "I feel it too." For the first time in weeks, she wasn't walking on eggshells, wasn't bracing for cruelty, wasn't wondering what she'd done wrong. She was just alone, and alone was better than unwanted. Her phone buzzed. She'd turned it back on out of habit. 17 missed calls. None from Leonard. Her mother, her sister, 2 close friends. She texted her mother, "I'm safe. I need time. Please don't worry." The reply came instantly. "Come home to Vermont, please." Serafina stared at the message. Home. She didn't know where that was anymore. That night, she lay on the thin motel mattress, staring at the water-stained ceiling. She thought about the girl she used to be, the one who believed in love, in promises, in forevers. That girl was gone, but someone stronger was taking her place. Meanwhile, back in Greenwich, Leonard stood in the empty nursery, the room Serafina had prepared. Soft yellow walls, a crib with a mobile of stars, folded blankets. He picked up a small stuffed bear. For a brief, fleeting moment, something cracked inside him. Guilt? Regret? He set the bear down, pulled out his phone, texted Alara, "Can I see you tonight?" Her reply was instant. "Always." He left the nursery and didn't look back. Serafina, miles away in a Hartford motel, felt the baby kick again. She placed both hands on her belly and made a silent promise. "I will protect you, no matter what it costs." She didn't know yet that the war was far from over, or that truth, quiet, patient, inevitable, was already sharpening its blade. Because some battles aren't won with noise, they're won with survival. And Serafina had just decided to survive. The contractions started at 2 a.m. Serafina woke in the motel room, gasping, a sharp, tightening pain that stole her breath. She waited. Another one, stronger. She grabbed her phone, hands shaking. Not Leonard's number. She'd deleted it days ago. She called 911. "I'm in labor, alone, Hartford Motor Lodge, room 12. The dispatcher stayed on the line. 15 minutes later, paramedics arrived. They were kind, professional. They didn't ask where her husband was. She was grateful for that. St. Francis Hospital in Hartford was quiet at 3 a.m. A nurse with soft hands helped her into a gown. Another checked her vitals. "Is anyone coming?" the nurse asked gently. Serafina shook her head. "That's okay, honey. We'll take care of you." The labor was long, painful, lonely. No hand to hold. No voice whispering encouragement. Just Serafina, the beeping monitors, and the baby fighting to enter a broken world. At 6:47 a.m., as pale sunlight crept through the window, Orion was born. A strong, healthy cry filled the room. The nurse placed him on Serafina's chest, and the world stopped. Tiny fingers, dark hair, eyes that hadn't opened yet but would soon see everything. She touched his face, tears streaming down her own. "Orion," she whispered. "Warrior under the stars." He quieted at her voice, like he'd been waiting to hear it. In that sterile hospital room, with no flowers, no celebration, no father, Serafina felt something she hadn't felt in months. Peace. Subscribe now, because what happens when the DNA results arrive will destroy everything Leonard thought he knew. The nurse smiled. "He's beautiful." "He is." "Does Dad know?" Serafina's jaw tightened. "He will." Because the truth was coming. And truth doesn't negotiate. Later that morning, a hospital administrator came by with paperwork. Birth certificate. Insurance. Standard procedure. Father's name? Serafina paused. She could leave it blank, pretend Leonard never existed. But lies had brought her here. She wouldn't build her son's life on them. Leonard Vale. The administrator's eyes widened slightly. She'd seen the headlines, but she said nothing. Just wrote it down. That afternoon, Serafina sat in the rocking chair beside Orion's bassinet, watching him sleep. Her phone buzzed. A message from the DNA testing lab. "Results ready for release. Confirm consent to send to all parties listed." Her finger hovered over the screen. This was it. The moment Leonard would face the consequences of his cruelty. She clicked yes. If you think you know how this ends, you don't. Subscribe before the bomb drops. And in a penthouse across the state, Leonard's phone buzzed too. He opened the email. Read the first line. And his entire world shattered. Leonard didn't read the email immediately. He was too busy celebrating. The conference room at Vale Capital in Manhattan was filled with executives, champagne, and the hum of victory. Leonard had just closed a $900 million acquisition, his largest deal in 3 years. Applause. Handshakes. Photos for the press. He stood at the head of the table, tie loosened, grinning like a man who owned the world. Because in his mind, he did. "To Leonard Vale," someone toasted, "the man who never loses." He raised his glass. Never loses. The irony would hit him soon enough. That evening, he took Ilara to dinner at Per Se in Columbus Circle. Floor-to-ceiling windows. A view of Central Park at sunset. A table that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Ilara wore black silk. Her hand rested on her stomach, barely showing, but visible enough. She was 3 months pregnant. Leonard had told only a few people. Close advisors, his lawyer. The narrative was already being shaped. Fresh start, new chapter, a woman who understands him. Ilara played her role perfectly. "You've been so strong through all of this," she said, her voice soft. "Not everyone could handle what you've been through." Leonard swirled his wine. "It hasn't been easy. But you did the right thing, protecting yourself, demanding the truth." He nodded, convinced. Ilara reached across the table, touched his hand. "And now we get to build something real, together." He smiled. For the first time in months, Leonard felt in control again. No more emotional ambushes, no more guilt, no more weak, needy Serafina clinging to him. Just power, clarity, a future designed exactly how he wanted. "I'm thinking we announce the engagement next month," he said. Ilara's eyes lit up. "Really?" "Why wait? The divorce will be finalized soon. Paternity results come back. We move forward." She leaned in, kissed him softly. "I love you." He believed her. Later, in the back of his chauffeured car, Leonard scrolled through his phone. He saw the email from the DNA lab. Subject line: Paternity test results confidential. He smirked. This was it, the final proof that Serafina had been lying, that his instincts were right. He'd open it tomorrow, savor the vindication. Tonight, he just wanted to enjoy being untouchable. He put the phone away. Ilara rested her head on his shoulder. And Leonard, arrogant, blind, doomed, had no idea the floor was about to collapse beneath him. Because the truth doesn't wait for convenience. It arrives exactly when it will hurt the most. Leonard opened the email at 7 a.m., coffee in hand, feet propped on his desk. The city stretched out below him through floor-to-ceiling windows. He expected vindication. He got devastation. Paternity test results. Case number VL2847. Alleged father, Leonard Vale. Child, Orion Vale. Probability of paternity, 99.99%. Conclusion. Leonard Vale cannot be excluded as the biological father. The words blurred. He read it again. Then again. His hand trembled. The coffee cup slipped from his fingers, crashing onto the marble floor. Hot liquid spread like a stain across white stone. He didn't move. Orion was his. Undeniably. Scientifically. Absolutely. Which meant his chest tightened. Everything he'd said, every accusation, every cold, calculated cruelty, all of it, a lie. A lie he'd weaponized against an innocent woman. His wife. The mother of his child. He stood abruptly, the chair scraping violently against the floor. He paced, hands in his hair, breathing shallow. No. This couldn't be right. He grabbed his phone, dialed the lab. This is Leonard Vale. I need to speak to someone about case VL2847. A calm voice answered. Yes, Mr. Vale. How can I assist? These results, are they final? Yes, sir. Verified and certified. There's no chance of error? Our accuracy rate is 99.99%. The results are conclusive. He hung up, stood frozen in the center of his office. The empire he'd built, the control he prided himself on, meant nothing in this moment. He had destroyed his family over a lie he'd convinced himself was truth. And worse, he'd done it publicly. His phone buzzed. A text from his lawyer. Saw the results. We need to talk. Immediately. Another buzz. His publicist. Leonard, the results leaked. It's everywhere. Call me now. His blood went cold. Leaked? He opened Twitter. The top trending topic. Number, Leonard Vale exposed. Headlines flooded his screen. Billionaire's paternity accusations. Proven false baby is his. Leonard Vale abandons pregnant wife over baseless cheating claims. DNA test vindicates Serafina Vale husband's cruelty exposed. The room spun. His phone rang. Then again. Board members, investors, journalists. He silenced it, sank into his chair, stared at the broken coffee cup on the floor. And for the first time in his life, Leonard Vale, billionaire, visionary, untouchable, felt the full weight of consequences. The truth had spoken, and it had destroyed him. The leak didn't come from Serafina. She had no interest in revenge. It came from someone Leonard had never noticed. Kiera Frost, 26, junior legal assistant at his law firm. The one who filed documents, organized case files, sat in the back of conference rooms taking notes. Invisible. Until she wasn't. Kiera had been in the room when Leonard's lawyer discussed strategy. She'd heard the cruel jokes, the dismissive comments about Serafina. She'll cave. They always do. She'd watched Leonard sign the divorce papers without hesitation, seen him laugh about it over whiskey. She'd stayed silent. But when the paternity results came back, when she saw 99.99% in black and white, and watched Leonard's legal team discuss damage control instead of accountability, something snapped. She copied the file, sent it to 3 journalists she trusted. Then she walked out of the firm and never came back. Within 2 hours, the story exploded. Not just gossip blogs, real news. The The New York Times. Billionaire divorces wife over false paternity claims. CNN. Leonard Vail's reputation crumbles after DNA results prove wife's innocence. Wall Street Journal. Vail Capital stock drops 11% amid personal scandal. The public fury was immediate. Social media erupted not with cancel culture threads, but raw, human anger. People saw the cruelty, the power imbalance, the abandonment of a pregnant woman based on nothing but ego. Leonard's phone didn't stop ringing. Sponsors pulled contracts. Charity boards requested his resignation. A senator publicly distanced himself. His lawyer called. "Leonard, we need a statement, now." Saying what? That it was a misunderstanding, that you're seeking reconciliation. Leonard laughed bitterly. "You want me to lie again? I want you to survive this." But survival required humility. And Leonard had none left. By noon, Vail Capital's stock had plummeted further. The board called an emergency meeting. His assistant knocked on his door. "Mr. Vail, there are reporters outside the building." He didn't answer, just sat in his office, staring at the screen. At the truth he'd tried to bury. Subscribe now because the worst is still coming, and Leonard has no idea. Across the country, in a quiet Hartford hospital room, Serafina held Orion and watched the news in silence. She felt no joy in Leonard's destruction, only exhaustion. Justice wasn't sweet. It was just necessary. And it had only just begun. If you think this is the end, you're wrong. Subscribe before the second bomb drops. The first call came at 6 a.m. Branson Industries, 20-year partnership, $12 million annually in joint ventures. Leonard, we're terminating the contract. On what grounds? Reputational risk. It's in the fine print. Our legal team will send the paperwork. Click. By 8 a.m., 3 more sponsors followed. A tech startup he'd personally funded, a luxury brand he'd endorsed, a healthcare foundation where he sat on the board. All gone. His publicist sent a memo marked urgent. "We're getting 200+ media requests per hour. CNN wants a statement. Forbes is running a feature on abuse of power. We need to control this now." Leonard stared at the email. Control. The word felt like a joke. By 10 a.m., Vail Capital's board convened an emergency session. Leonard sat at the head of the table, same seat he'd occupied for 15 years. But the faces looking back at him weren't allies anymore. They were investors protecting assets. "Leonard," the CFO began carefully, "the stock is down 17%. That's $1.4 billion in market value, in 2 days. It'll recover." "Not if this continues," another board member cut in. "The narrative is toxic. Billionaire abandons pregnant wife, false accusations, public humiliation. I made a mistake. You made a liability." The words hung in the air like a verdict. The board's lead counsel leaned forward. "We're recommending you step down temporarily. Let someone else be the face while this blows over." Leonard's jaw clenched. "This is my company, and it's our fiduciary responsibility to protect it." Silence. Then, slowly, hands began to raise. A vote. Against him. 7-2. Leonard stood, didn't say a word, just walked out. The door closed behind him with a finality that echoed. Outside the building, reporters swarmed. Cameras, microphones, shouted questions. "Mr. Vail, do you regret your actions? Will you seek custody of your son? Was this about control or cruelty?" His security pushed through the crowd. He kept his head down, but one voice cut through the noise. "Do you even care that you destroyed her?" He stopped, turned. A young woman, holding a phone, recording. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Because the answer, whatever it was, wouldn't change anything. The damage was done. He climbed into the back of his car. The door shut. And for the first time in his life, Leonard Vail sat in silence and realized, power doesn't make you untouchable. It just makes the fall harder. Alara had prepared for victory. Not scrutiny. The first article mentioned her by name on Wednesday. Leonard Vale's new partner. Who is Ilara Miles? It wasn't hostile, just curious. But curiosity has teeth. By Thursday, the tone shifted. A lifestyle blogger dug into her background, posted old photos from social media, traced her connections. Ilara Miles, the woman who entered Leonard Vale's life weeks before divorce filing. The timeline was damning. Dinner receipts, event photos, check-ins at the same hotels, all dated before Leonard filed. The narrative began to write itself. Ilara called Leonard in a panic. "Have you seen what they're saying?" His voice was hollow. "I've seen all of it. They're making me look like what you are?" Silence. Her tone hardened. "Excuse me? You told me to question her, to demand the test, to protect myself. I was supporting you. You were manipulating me." She laughed bitterly. "You're really going to blame me now, after everything?" "I'm not blaming you. I'm just seeing clearly for the first time." "Leonard." He hung up. Ilara stared at her phone, rage boiling beneath her carefully crafted exterior. This wasn't supposed to happen. She was supposed to be the new Mrs. Vale, the woman on his arm at galas, the mother of his heir. Not the villain in someone else's redemption story. She opened Twitter. Her name was trending. The comments were vicious. "Ilara Miles is a homewrecker, period. Imagine being pregnant and thinking you won by destroying another woman's family. She didn't just steal a husband. She helped him destroy an innocent mother." Her hands shook. She tried to post a statement, something vague about privacy and respect. It got ratioed in minutes. By Friday, sponsors who'd quietly associated with her luxury brands, hoping she'd be the next influencer wife, pulled back. Her carefully built image was collapsing. And worse, Leonard had gone silent. No calls, no texts. She drove to his penthouse unannounced. The doorman stopped her. "I'm sorry, Miss Miles. Mr. Vale left instructions. You're not on the access list anymore." Her stomach dropped. "That's a mistake." "No, ma'am. Updated this morning." She stood in the lobby, designer heels on marble floors, staring at the elevator she'd ridden dozens of times, and realized she'd played the game perfectly, but she'd bet on the wrong king. Leonard was falling, and she was chained to him. Ilara walked back to her car, jaw tight, mask finally cracking. Because power attracted her, but ruin that she hadn't planned for. And it was coming for her fast. Ilara's baby was born on a cold Monday in February. A private hospital in Soho, no announcements, no visitors. Just Ilara, a team of nurses, and a secret she'd buried deep. The baby was healthy, a boy. The doctor smiled. "Congratulations, does Dad know?" Ilara's face remained calm. "He's been informed." A lie. Because Leonard wasn't the father. She'd known for weeks. But admitting it meant losing everything. So she'd stayed silent, played the role, hoped timing and circumstance would protect her. But doubt is a patient hunter. And Leonard, broken, as he was, still had enough pride left to ask questions. He came to the hospital that evening, not out of love, out of obligation. He stood at the foot of her bed, staring at the baby in the bassinet. Something felt wrong. "I want a test," he said quietly. Ilara's heart stopped. "What?" "DNA test. Same as I did with Serafina." Her face went pale. "You don't trust me either?" "I don't trust anyone anymore." She forced tears. "After everything I've been through with you, then you'll have no problem proving it." Silence. She had no way out. "Fine," she whispered. The test was done the next day. Results took 5 days. Ilara didn't sleep. When the email arrived, Leonard opened it in his penthouse. He read the first line, then the second. Then he stood, walked to the window, and laughed. Not joy, not relief. Bitter, hollow disbelief. Probability of paternity, 0%. Conclusion: Leonard Vale is excluded as the biological father. He forwarded the report to his lawyer with one word: over. Then he did something unexpected. He called a forensic investigator. Find out who the father is. I don't care what it costs." 48 hours later, the investigators sent a file. Leonard opened it, and his blood ran cold. The biological father was Marcus Calloway. A rival executive Leonard had destroyed 5 years ago, publicly humiliated, forced out of the industry. The same man who'd sworn revenge. Subscribe. What happens next will redefine justice entirely. Ilara hadn't just cheated. She'd partnered with Leonard's enemy. And the baby? Proof of the longest, most calculated con Leonard had ever fallen for. He sat in the silence of his empty penthouse. 2 DNA tests. 2 truths. One destroyed an innocent woman. The other destroyed him. If you're not subscribed yet, you'll regret missing the final act. The second leak came from Leonard himself. Not intentionally. His investigator's report was stored on his company server. A server that after his forced stepping down was being audited by the board. Someone found it. Someone shared it. By Wednesday morning, the story was everywhere. Leonard Vale's mistress pregnant with rival's child. Ilara Miles' baby belongs to executive Leonard destroyed years ago. The revenge affair. Marcus Calloway's 5-year con. The narrative was perfect. Too perfect to ignore. Marcus Calloway, once a rising star at Kellerman Financial, had been crushed by Leonard in a hostile takeover. Lost his position, his reputation, his future. He'd disappeared from the industry. But he hadn't disappeared from planning. Ilara had been his weapon. Planted carefully in Leonard's circle. Beautiful, ambitious, patient. Her job wasn't just seduction. It was destruction. And she'd executed it flawlessly. Leonard had divorced his innocent wife, humiliated her publicly, destroyed his own reputation, all while Ilara whispered poison in his ear. And the child she carried? A final insult. Proof that Leonard Vale, the man who prided himself on control, had been played from the beginning. The media frenzy was savage. Late-night hosts made jokes. Memes flooded the internet. Financial analysts called it the most expensive affair in Wall Street history. Leonard's stock dropped another 9%. His name became a punchline. But worse than the public mockery was the private truth. He deserved it. Every headline, every lost contract, every sneer. He had weaponized power against an innocent woman, and karma had returned the favor with precision. Thursday afternoon, Leonard sat alone in his penthouse. No assistants, no lawyers, no Ilara. Just silence. His phone buzzed. A message from Marcus Calloway. The first direct contact in 5 years. Checkmate. Leonard stared at the screen. He could have replied, threatened, raged. But what was the point? He'd lost. Not just the game. Everything. His marriage, his reputation, his empire, his future. All because he'd believed he was untouchable. He set the phone down, walked to the window, looked out over the city that once worshipped him, and realized the fall from the top isn't just painful. It's permanent. Ilara, meanwhile, had vanished. No statements, no photos, no explanations. She'd played her role, collected her payment from Marcus, whatever deal they'd struck, and disappeared into obscurity, leaving Leonard with nothing but wreckage. And across the country, in a small apartment in Vermont, Serafina held Orion and watched the news. She didn't smile, didn't celebrate, just held her son closer. Because some victories aren't sweet. They're just survival. Leonard found her address through his lawyer. A small apartment in Burlington, Vermont. Modest, quiet. Nothing like the estate she'd left behind. He drove 7 hours. No driver, no security, just him and the weight of everything he'd destroyed. He stood outside her door for 10 minutes before knocking. When it opened, he barely recognized her. Not because she'd changed physically, but because the woman staring back at him had a strength in her eyes he'd never seen before. Serafina didn't speak, just stood in the doorway, one hand on the frame. Leonard's voice cracked. I came to apologize. Silence. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know what I did was, he stopped, swallowed hard, unforgivable. She still said nothing. Behind her, he could hear it, a soft sound. A baby. His son. The son he'd accused her of lying about. Leonard's knees almost buckled. "Can I see him?" His voice was barely a whisper. Serafina's jaw tightened. "Why?" "Because he's mine. Now you believe that?" The words cut deeper than any headline. Leonard's hands trembled. "I was wrong. About everything. I let someone poison my mind. I let my ego destroy us." "You didn't let anything happen, Leonard. You chose it." He nodded. Tears streamed down his face. "I'm sorry. God, Serafina. I'm so sorry." She stood still, unmoved. "I'll do anything," he continued. "Anything to make this right. I'll pay for everything. Set up a trust. Give you the house. Whatever you need." "I don't need your money." "Then what? Tell me what you need." She looked at him for a long moment. Then spoke. "I need you to leave." Subscribe. Her next words will change everything. Leonard's face crumpled. "Please. You humiliated me, accused me, abandoned me while I carried your child." Her voice didn't waver. "And now you want forgiveness because you got caught." "That's not—" "It is." The baby cried softly inside. Serafina glanced back, then returned her gaze to Leonard. "You don't get to walk back in because your life fell apart. You made your choices." "I know, but—" "Goodbye, Leonard." She closed the door. Leonard stood in the hallway, broken. He pressed his forehead against the door. And for the first time in his life, Leonard Vale understood. Some wounds don't heal with apologies. Some doors don't reopen. Subscribe now, the final chapter will break you. 6 months later, Serafina stood in a small park in Burlington, pushing Orion in a swing. His laughter filled the air, pure, unburdened, free. She'd rebuilt her life slowly. A small graphic design business run from home. A tight circle of friends. Quiet mornings with her son. No mansion, no spotlight, no power games. Just peace. Her phone buzzed occasionally with interview requests, podcast invitations, book deals. She declined them all. Her story wasn't for sale. It was for healing. Orion looked up at her, eyes bright, reaching for the sky. "Higher, Mama." She smiled, pushed him gently. "Higher." And she did. Across the country, Leonard sat in a different kind of silence. His penthouse had been sold. Vale Capital had pushed him out entirely. Most of his wealth was tied up in legal battles and settlements. He lived in a modest condo in Boston now. No staff, no empire, no Ilara. Just Leonard and the consequences he'd spent a lifetime avoiding. He'd tried reaching out to Serafina twice more. Both letters returned unopened. He didn't blame her. Some bridges burned completely. His therapist asked him once, "What did you learn?" Leonard stared out the window for a long time. That power protects nothing, and control is an illusion. And that I destroyed the only real thing I ever had. Ilara had vanished entirely. Rumor was she'd moved to Europe, changed her name, started over. Marcus Calloway never commented publicly, but his career had quietly resurged. Poetic justice delivered in silence. One evening, Serafina received an envelope. No return address. Inside, a single check, made out for $2 million. A note in Leonard's handwriting. "For Orion, not as payment, as responsibility. You don't have to forgive me, but please let him know I tried." She stared at it for a long time, then deposited it into a trust fund. Not for Leonard's sake, for her son's future. That night, she rocked Orion to sleep, whispering the same words she always did. "You are loved. You are strong. You are enough." He drifted off, small hand wrapped around her finger. And Serafina, once broken, now whole, realized something profound. Revenge would have felt empty. But rebuilding? That felt like victory. Power protects no one when truth decides to speak. But truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs to survive. And she had.